Okay, you got it recording now? All right, starting over. So one of the most important things you do as data scientist is to communicate your results. If you have the best analysis possible and great results, but nobody can understand them, what good was it? You really just did it for yourself at that point. So one of the things we're going to focus on is being able to communicate your results. So this is in several different forms, right? We're going to talk for a minute about what makes for a good report and what makes for a good presentation. And lastly, we're going to talk about the elevator pitch. So in particular, your reports and presentations, this is timely because you're all preparing those right now for your final project presentations and deliverables. So one of the important things to consider with any of these communication vehicles is who your audience is, right? You don't want to present anything, whether it's written or verbal, in a way that people that you're trying to communicate with are not going to understand it. Some people think that makes them look really smart, right? Because they got all technical and nobody could follow what they were doing. My own belief is if you really know a subject, you can put it at the level that other people can understand it. And when they understand it, they'll get excited about it and they'll want to maybe give you more funding to work on it or work with you in the future. You will encourage them to pursue that topic. And that's what your communication should do. So we're going to talk for a second about reports. So some things to do about reports. Number one rule, don't be boring. Do not bore your audience. Even if it's written, it should be well organized. It should be easy to read and tell a story. It shouldn't just be a place where you dump everything that you ever did about your project, right? So you want the key visualizations, the ones that tell your story. Not every visualization you could possibly do, right? I have seen reports that have the same graph applied to every single variable, and you get lost in all that detail. It's one thing to have all of that for yourself as you're doing your data analysis to figure out then, okay, these are the ones that I want to use to tell my story. Okay, so you want it to be organized around your story. You want it in a format that other people can open. So think PDF or HTML, right? Not everybody has a Word license, right? So you want it in a format that others can open. And you want it to have good grammar and sentence structure. You don't want sentence fragments. You don't want it to, because it's really hard for people to read it if they have to constantly take it and translate that into what you're trying to say. So have someone proofread it for you, right? To be sure it's understandable. So what's the structure of your report? What should it be like? Well, I like to start a report with motivating my reader. Why should they care? Why should they invest their time in reading this document that you're producing for them? Then you always want to say where your data came from. And then what does it tell you? That's your analysis and visualizations. That's the meat of it. And then what did you conclude? And last but certainly not least, how could you be wrong? Okay, what would make your conclusions be wrong? Is it some problem in the data? Is it a personal bias that you might have where it could really mean another thing than what you said? So you always want to identify any possible sources of error. So that's written report. Are there any questions on that before I move on? Because you're all going to be doing these shortly. Did I bore you?
No.
Okay, here we go. Presentations. Don't be boring. You see, this is the same thing I said for the written reports, right? So you want to be organized and tell the story. Same in your presentation as in your report. It's just not going to be as long, but you're going to tell the story. You're going to have your key visualizations because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And you want to make eye or camera contact. It's just harder when you're on Zoom, right? Because like right now, I can't see any of your sweet faces, right? But I'm trying to look as much as I can into the camera so you feel like I'm making eye contact with you. So some big don'ts in your presentation. It was easier for me to identify the don'ts. First off, don't be boring. Don't read your slides word for word. If you have put all your words on the slides and you sit here and read it to me, one, I feel insulted. And two, I'm trying to read your slides along as you're trying to present. So I can't really focus both places. I can't focus on what you're telling me and on what the slide is saying. So if you have more words than about what I've got on this slide, it's too many. Those should be in, if you've got to give yourself notes, put it in the notes section or have a piece of paper to the side where you have bullet points of things you're going to cover. Your slides should just contain your main points that you want to cover. And should be sort of like for someone to stop and take notes on, but shouldn't have all the notes. Okay. You do not want to talk in a monotone voice because it is really hard to follow and it is boring. Okay. So be excited and enthusiastic about your subject. If you don't care about it, why does your listener care? Right. And I know a lot of people have anxiety about speaking to groups. So practice it, right? But practice it with friends, but try to convey your enthusiasm for the subject as best you can. And by practicing, it will keep you from going over the time limit. So you will know that for your final project presentations, you're going to have 20 minutes. And we have people scheduled every 20 minutes. And we have clients coming in. So at about 19 minutes, if you don't look like you're wrapping up, I'm going to tell you you've got 1 minute left. And that's all you're going to get. So, get the best bang for your buck in terms of what you're going to convey in that 20 minutes. And similarly, don't overwhelm your audience with a lot of similar visualizations, right? You can always pick the one that tells your story the best and then say the others are similar to this, or do some sort of like a facet wrap or something like that, where you can show multiples on one side and just talk about the one. Do we have any questions on the presentations?
There was a question on reports.
Okay. The question about writing articles in our book down. I think it's great. It's like our Markdown. It's just like our Markdown Plus kind of thing.
What about our Markdown in general?
Our Markdown in general is great because it's then reproducible. So your reports should be reproducible. So our Markdown is great. If you're using Python, then you might want to use a Jupyter Notebook, or you could use our Markdown for Python as well. So something that has the code and the text together is very helpful. And you definitely want your stuff to be reproducible.
Dr. Walt, what happens if we do like 15 minutes? Is there a minimum?
No, there's no minimum. As long as you have, conveyed what's in your project, and you should think of it as your client has given you 20 minutes to sell them on doing a follow-on project or follow-on work for them. Okay, you're going to show them what all you've done. I know you've been meeting with them every week, but think of this as like the executive pitch when you get done.
And I just have a question as well. So is there a, I guess, length requirement for the actual report?
Nope.
Okay, so if our client says they want something smaller, then that's fine to turn in as well.
Yeah, and if you want to do 2 different documents, that's okay. It's not required. But if you want something that's going to capture all your code, or if they don't want something that shows that, you can always do a version and turn echo equals false, in the version that you're giving to them. But you do want to capture your code that you're using to produce your analysis. You could put it in an appendix if they don't want it in the main document, something like that. But I'd like for your final report at least a version of it to be complete enough that you can go back and remember what all you did, and you can also showcase it to a potential employer.
Perfect, thanks.
Anything else on this stuff? So another thing on your presentations, the do's, do include pictures to make your main points. It's much easier to just talk to a picture and explain the picture that corroborates what your main points are. Do target your talk to the audience. So for instance, you guys have clients that you're working with, and if you're doing a machine learning algorithm, most of your clients aren't going to understand the machine learning algorithm that you're dealing with. So target the talk to the audience that makes it to where they understand what you have done and why you have done it. Okay, do be enthusiastic, do practice, do maintain eye contact. There are also whiteboards you can use, especially when you were back in the day when we're doing this in person. It's much more effective to just go over and write on the board rather than show a slide that's got the bullets up there, especially if you're trying to do an example of something. Okay, so it's easier for the person to follow. And you always want your audience to feel like, oh yeah, I got that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Instead of like, where did he get that from? You know, so you want them to feel involved and like they understand what's going on. Now, last but not least is the elevator pitch. So the elevator pitch is a 1 minute or less description of what you are doing that a 13-year-old could understand. A 13-year-old non-super genius, okay? So think about, how are you going to tell your, say, your nephew who's 13 years old what you're working on in a minute or less? Okay, this is very handy when you're at a cocktail party and you meet somebody, or you're off for lunch, or you run into somebody in the elevator or in the hallway or whatever, and they say, oh, what are you working on? Somebody at your work. What are you working on? What kind of project are you doing for school? You want to have something ready that you're going to tell them, okay? And this is going to be your assignment this week, is to do an elevator pitch and record it. You can do a recording on Zoom. It doesn't have to be fancy, but do a recording. You do it on your phone. I don't care how you do it, but then you're going to upload that recording. So you may have to just upload a link to the recording or something like that. I'm not sure if Blackboard is going to like the recordings or not, but I want you to do an elevator pitch on your project. So 1 minute or less for a non-technical audience, and tell them what you're doing for your project. So all those fancy acronyms that you like, you know, machine learning stuff, you're going to have to figure out how to explain that quickly to a non-technical person and give them the idea of what you're doing. Are there questions? No? Okay, I will turn you loose to go to your individual Zoom rooms. My class can just stay here and we'll do our status reports. And remember, your presentations are now, let's see, 3 weeks from tonight. Okay, so we're trying to get those scheduled. It's probably going to be a little bit outside of our normal class window, and that a couple of people we may ask you if you can start early or stay late, and see how that's going to work out. Okay, so if you have constraints around that, let your professor know. Okay, all right. I'll look forward to seeing you all later. Oh, wait a minute. There's something in the chat, I think. Let's see. Oh, just a thanks. Okay, see y'all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, let's see. I'm going to share my screen again because I've got times penciled in for our project presentations, and I wanted to see how these are going to do with you guys. Let's see. Is Bo here? Yes, Bo. Does 4:45 in the afternoon East Coast time work for you, or would you rather do later?
It seems to work for me. Yeah.
Does that work for you? 4:45?
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one that I was going to do early is Monica. Does 5:10 work for you?
Yes, and sorry, what day is this again?
The
April
26th of
20?
April.
Okay, yeah, it works. Thank you.
Yeah, because you guys are working on projects for the other faculty members that are also have practicum sections. I had to try to move those outside of the regular hours. So everybody else, okay, so the other question I had was for Lauren and Sarah. Do you guys, are you planning to do a joint presentation, or do you want to do separate presentations?
We're gonna do joint.
Okay.
I was like, I'll wait on Sarah, but I think we're doing it together.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're doing
I
it
thought you
together.
probably were, so I don't need this one.
Okay.
Okay,
And
so you'll
we're
both do it
still-
6:15.
And we're still at like 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, you can take
Okay.
a few minutes longer if you need. I won't cut you off right at 20. I'll probably give you 25 minutes.
Perfect.
Okay. And then Min, do you know if you and the other person working on Dr. Alonso's thing want to do a joint thing, or?
Yeah, we literally texting right now about it.
Okay.
Yeah, if we can, that'll be great. Just so then he doesn't have to sit and listen to almost like two exact thing, with
Yeah.
some variation, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll probably put you both at 6:40 in Maria's room.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay. So we'll do 6:40 p.m. in Maria's room, and I'll make a note here, Baruti's room.
Okay.
Because that'll be the last one I'm doing with my group. And then,
Okay.
So I'll just jump into her room and then I'll be gone.
Okay.
Okay. These times work for everybody. Rabia, does this time work for you?
Yes, it works for me.
Okay. Let's see, is Victor here?
Yep, that looks good.
Okay. All right, let's talk about how you guys are, and I'll send this on to them and then we'll work out any kinks. So we were just trying to brainstorm on that before you guys got in the room tonight to be sure, how we're going to work this when, some of Maria's students are doing Zoyce's projects and too many moving parts. And we're trying to make it to where clients don't have to stay a long time. They can do all their students' projects contiguously. So that's what we're trying to work out. Because as you will learn, the client's needs are our first priority. So, all right, let's see. Monica, why don't you start us off tonight?
Sure. So this has been my most unproductive week. I feel like I've been on schedule for everything. It's a little bit of coupled with work and like interviewing, which feels like a second job. But
Totally.
yeah. But so I have finished the BERT pipeline and I am working on my other two models pipelines, which is LDA and Word2Vec. I have got it to work for Word2Vec. I haven't started LDA, which I'll do this week, but Word2Vec, I have been able to create the embeddings, but when it comes to working with the output into Lime, the explainability, it's getting like an error. I think it has to do with, I have a few solutions. I think it's the numbers are coming out are too big, like some floats are really, really long. So I'm thinking about doing some standardization, basically like scaling it. And also playing around with, because with Word2Vec, you can set a threshold of words. So if like a word only shows up once, you can like remove that from the model. So I think that's what's happening, that there's a lot of words that don't have a lot of importance. So that's why they have such like a small weight. So when I divide it, it basically blows up into like a huge float. So I think I know what the issue is, like, which is good. So now I just have to fix it. So that'll be most of my focus this week, just finishing the other two pipelines, so I can start on the presentation and the report.
Good.
Yeah,
Min,
that's all I have.
thank you, Monica.
Okay, so all right. So actually, past week we did a lot. This is probably the most productive one. So so basically, what we did is we finalized some of the scripts for the project. So there are like a bunch of regions that we're working on within that Alaska section of the project. So we have like south, mid, and no, actually, sorry, north, mid, and then the southern region we have like 3 different parts to it. So so a lot of like, 5 different files, but in case in the future we have more files, what I did is I created like a loop that ran through like the data folder and just automatically rename the file and then put them all together in one list and create a column of whatever region it's in, like automatically. So then in the future, I told the professor if he wants to copy, he can just use that for his, whatever project he wants to do a work on. And then the last file, which is all the LiDAR information, just automatically get read in. And then the one thing I noticed is when I was running some of the scripts in like 2 weeks ago, is that sometimes it takes forever because like point clouds have so many observations that sometimes it takes forever. And I don't know if it's because the computer is slow or bad or it's frozen or whatever. So a lot of time I realized that it's actually just because it takes time. So what I started doing is that for every single loop and function that I created like a start and finish time thingy where it measured the processing time. So then each time I run something, it will save the processing time of that. So then in the future, whoever runs it would be like, okay, so this takes roughly around this much time. If it's longer, then it's probably some computer issue. So I did that with the loop, and then I created a function that I'm actually thinking about after this project is done. I actually might kind of bring it out into like an actual package and just upload it on GitHub because I kind of liked it, but it was a lot of work. But basically what it does is that I call it get last crowns, but so what it does is that it takes the last or LiDAR information and it merged with the shape data, which is created using ArcGIS map, and it kind of merged them together and paired them up based on the GPS coordinates as well. So instead of previously what we've been doing, we did control enter or whatever for each line, and there are like 6-7 lines, and you have to do it for each region, and it's just, it adds up and it takes a while. So sometimes it's just a waste of time to sit and kind of wait until it's done and control enter. So instead, I create a function that does it for us. So then I can just run it, and then I do my other work, and I come back, and it will be done. So I did that as well, and then we finalized the actual data frame. So we created a raw data frame of all the variables that we created using the from the point clouds, and then we created a few like missing tree and ID data frame as well. Just with last file, when you save them, it doesn't carry over non-numeric data. So basically what I did is I added in like a last, I don't know what you call it, but I guess like an attribute to the last file that actually sticks on it permanently. So then the point cloud file actually increases in size, but the ID number sticks there permanently. So then when we start the project, we don't have to read the file again. We just read the last file, and then we merge the data, the tree data, with the ID number that I permanently added in to combine it in case something happened. It's much quicker. So we did that. And then I ran like a bunch of descriptive analytics, a lot of histogram about like the height and like the color at different quantile of the tree height. Apparently that's like a big thing. They like to know like if it's what's the number of points or color within 75%, 90%, and 98% quantile. And there's like a big distinction between like dead and alive tree if you like match them up. So we did a bunch of that to kind of see, like what else we can do with the data, or if we're on the right track. And it looks like everything is, like exactly what we thought it would be anyway. Based on the green color, it's much more in a live tree versus dead tree, especially on the peak level of the tree or peak height of the tree. And then last thing that we did is we actually ran a couple models, and then Also did we used like a bunch of stuff we learned in machine learning, like the subset forward and backward methods to try to figure out which variables we can eliminate and not. And then we did lasso using like the tenfold CV method that we learned as well. So we did that, and then we ran a correlation plot to kind of see if the variable any multicollinearity. And then I think that's pretty much it. It's not like a lot. I think we probably did a lot more, but I think it was a full workload. But we were a little bit behind, I think, in terms of running data. So we stepped up a little bit.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rabia.
So this week from previous analysis, both sentiment analysis and the OLS regression that I ran on the data, they confirmed that the number of times the word employee had occurred in the training corpus, the sentiment score would decrease likewise. And this for me suggested that the COVID-19 complaints had to do with the employees. And so this past week, I had ran k-means clustering to further understand whether these complaints had to do with the employees either not following the SOPs or rules or regulations, so I can paint a more fuller story in my analysis. So I did that, and I also worked on refining and commenting out the code book, and I walked Professor Lafiore through my notebook, explaining each code chunk and the results obtained during our one-on-one meeting this past Friday. Based upon her feedback, she did recommend that I further analyze the data in terms of like the different industries that are listed to see if there would be any kind of relationship between the number of complaints being made as well as which industry had the most occurrences of the word employee and would thus require greater attention from a public policy standpoint. So this week, I'm going to further break down the data based upon the industry type, find any relationships between the different columns within the data frame, and then summarize those results in relevant plots to add more to my analysis.
That sounds really neat, Rabia.
Thank you.
Lauren and Sarah.
This week, due to Monica's suggestion, we looked at Lasso to determine what variables would be good to use for our model, and that is actually working out a lot better than yeah. So thank you, Monica.
No problem.
And Dr. Hart, like a client, is not really sure about what variable she really wants to, regress on. So we've just kind of been playing around with choosing whether or not we want to do the knowledge change, which is the combination of, or the difference in the scores between the pre and the post test, or just the final knowledge test. And it looks like that final score is going to be a better predictor about how well students are doing overall due to the intervention. So I think we're starting to get our model finalized. And then lastly, we're just gonna look at some machine learning methods, a random forest, and something else that Lauren is working on.
Were you able to get any more help from the statistics consulting group?
Yeah, they're the ones that actually sent us the code for the Lasso method because it's just like a lot of different documentation on what the best way to do it, especially when you're looking at multi-level. So they've been like very helpful. I honestly, we couldn't have done this project without them. So thanks for the rec. Cool.
Anything you want to add, Lauren?
No, Sarah's a total boss though. And Monica, we really appreciate your help.
It's
no problem.
Your best resources are your colleagues, right? And that will continue in your careers, right? So you always have to be ready to help each other and ask for help. So, because none of us knows it all, right? Nobody's gonna, and it moves so fast. If you knew it all today, by tomorrow you're obsolete. So always, use each other. Bo, what you got?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So last week I spent more time to make sure the Hoshin apps works well so that I can move on to the machine learning part. And also, let me check. I did some pre-processing, like clean the data and did some EDAs. And actually, I use a logistic regression because I am going to predict the air quality for different classifications, so that I use the multiple logistic regressions. And also last week I'm going to use the data from 2019 and 2020's data to set up the model and use it to predict 2021's actual air qualities to make a comparison. My plan is to use the K-folders cross validations to make sure the models is good, and you probably use the KNN method. That's my plan, and that's it.
Okey doke. Thank you. Victor.
Hey, last week I did a bunch of research on 2008, 2012 to get a better picture of how the election went, so I could kind of track the money on the expenditure data that I was given. I then had a long meeting with Jennifer again. She gave me a bunch more questions that I could use to better analyze the data and kind of, paint a better picture. So that's what I've been working on. This week, I'm on the last steps of processing the data and getting the visualizations in there. So I probably will start my presentation probably on Thursday this week, but that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Now, let me just let you guys know, when you're doing your presentations on the 26th, you will need to have your cameras on. So you will need to arrange to be somewhere where you can get decent bandwidth so you can have your camera on and share your screen. Okay. You also, I'm not asking that you wear a suit for your presentation, but you want to dress, at least from here up, right? in something that looks sort of professional. Okay. So just pretend you're presenting to a client, but they can't see from your waist down. So if you have on, if you're naked from the waist down, I don't care, but, but just look professional, present a professional appearance to your client. Okay. You're selling your work. This is the culmination of what you've spent all semester doing. And it's really, in a large extent, a culmination of what you've spent the last couple of years working on, right? This is your showcase. So, take advantage of that and use it to practice giving your presentation like you would to a client, to a real client in real life, okay? So I'm just giving you that warning in advance because I know some of you may or may not live where you have, the good bandwidth. So try to figure out where you can go. I mean, you can always go into AU and use, like the lobby there in, what the heck's the name of my old building? Don Myers. How quickly they forget, right? So today they actually put the furniture in my house in Colorado. I haven't seen it yet, but it's there. So I now have furniture out there. So when you guys want to come visit, hit me up because I'll have a place just outside of Boulder. So come out and hang out. But I won't be there until probably end of May, early June is my thought of when I'll get out there, unpack boxes and settle in. But any questions?
Is there a confirmation on whether or not there'll be in-person ceremony or not?
I have not heard that. The last thing I heard was they were going to do one, but that it was only going to be limited number of guests. But I haven't seen the announcement on that, but I apologize. I have been like checking my American email like once every 2 or 3 weeks and deleting everything that didn't look like it was, from a student or a friend. So I haven't really been paying attention to that. So I would suggest you shoot an email to maybe Betty Malloy, who's now the data science director, and see if If she can confirm that, she should know.
Okay, thanks.
If you need her email, it's Malloy, MALLOY @american.edu. Bless you, men. No sound, but I saw it. So there you go.
I thought I muted myself, and I was like, how'd you hear me?
You were muted, but I could see it.
Thanks.
So I don't know, what have you guys thought about doing this practicum? Has it been fun? Has it been a learning experience? Has it just been a pain? What's your thought for going forward?
I like it. It honestly has gone really fast this semester. I don't know. I mean, this whole year has felt like 10 years, but this semester has felt really fast. Yeah, it's been good.
Because we'd like it to be a good learning experience. So if you're not really learning anything doing it, and you don't find it helpful, then we need to know that to make changes. So
I'll be honest, in my mind, I think a more helpful experience would be if we were like literally like in the field with the client. Like, I mean, I'm working with my client, but like, she's kind of just like letting me to run the project that I want to do versus, doing the legitimate work that I would be doing if I was in the field, if that makes sense.
So maybe an internship instead of the practicum would be.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Better for you. Mm-hmm.
I personally have. I mean, we got a good, like our experience has been great, but I guess we kind of went out there a little bit to try to not work with data that we work with. So that's why I think because of that we learned a lot. I felt like my coding game up a lot in terms of R and Python because I was actually doing both.
Nice.
So I thought. I mean, so far it's been great. Definitely internship helped a lot too, because then you can actually, it's like more professional practice in practice type of work. But either way, I think it works. We're just lucky we got the right project, maybe perhaps. So.
Yeah, well, part of it is getting the right project, and part of it is just right now with COVID still. It's hard to get people into internships and to have anything meaningful where you can, and I think it's just made this work harder as well, because you can't just sit down and meet with the client or go sit in their office and look at the screens together. So it's been a challenging time to do this program, but kudos to all of you for hanging in there to do it. So. All right, y'all, I will see you next week. Now, if you need me, text me. Or use my djwall@yahoo.com email. Because like I'm saying, I'm checking email like every other week or something and have like 200 emails piled up by then. And it's mostly, administrative crap that I don't care about anymore. So I just delete it. So, all right, take care. Be safe. See you next week.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.